Welcome to a webinar on writing multiple choice test questions. While multiple choice tests may seem easy, in fact, writing the test questions requires significant skill. This webinar will show you how it's done. In a high-stakes educational environment, you want to accurately and easily assess student knowledge. Multiple choice questions do that. The key to successful item design, however, is in minimizing the amount of guessing that is possible. Let's take a look at an example. The first part of the question is called the stem, and it should be written as a question. Great stems are constructed such that after students read the stem, if they have mastered the content, they'll know the answer. If you're a science buff or were just a good student in school, you may know that the process here is called photosynthesis. This is the correct answer, also known as the keyed response. Along with the keyed response is a set of distractors. They must be selected thoughtfully so that they distract the student who has some level of knowledge but has not mastered the content. That way, only those students with sufficient mastery should select the correct answer. Let's take a look at these. Respiration is the other major process of plant metabolism. Students may be familiar with both photosynthesis and respiration, but the student who possesses content mastery will be able to easily select the correct response. Chlorophyll will be another term familiar to the students. It is required for photosynthesis, but chlorophyllism is not the correct answer. Autotrophs are organisms that produce food from elements in the environment. Green plants are autotrophs that produce food through photosynthesis. As you can see, all of the distractors are closely related to the content, thus increasing the likelihood that only those students with a clear understanding of the content will select the correct answer. These are the components of a multiple choice question: the stem, keyed response, and distractors. Every multiple choice question can be categorized in terms of its content level and Bloom's taxonomy. Some questions assess the student's knowledge of facts, others concepts, others principles, and still others procedures. As you consider your course content, you'll want to develop questions at all of these levels. Within each level, you'll want to ask questions across three categorizations of Bloom's taxonomy: remembering and understanding, applying and analyzing, evaluating and creating. Let's take a look at an example of each. Answering this requires merely remembering a fact. This requires the student to demonstrate that they can read a chart and apply that skill to answer the question. This requires the student to consider the Impressionist artists studied and evaluate each one's impact on the movement. On the concept level, this question requires the student to understand when to use these two forms of the word for you. This requires the student to understand the time length of musical notes and analyze a set of notes versus a single note to find a match in time length. This requires the student to evaluate the parts of a word, prefix, root, and suffix, and decide which defines the meaning the best. On the principles level, this question tests the student's ability to remember the principle of popular sovereignty. This requires the student to apply knowledge of gravity to the solar system to determine that the answer is tides. As you may notice, it is difficult to construct multiple choice questions at the upper level of Bloom's taxonomy that are not simply remembering content that was taught. If the course content includes the fact that the gravitational pull of the sun and moon creates the tides, this becomes a fact question. You must develop higher level questions on content that is not specifically taught so that students can use their learned knowledge in new situations. This question requires the student to evaluate key principles in photography and create a solution. Again, if the course content covers this question, it is reduced to remembering. On the procedures level, the student must remember a particular soccer shot. This requires the student to analyze the effect of an ingredient in the baking process. And this question requires a student to evaluate popular reproductions such as giclées, lithographs, and serigraphs, and create a solution for the need. You may want to keep a grid like this one to tally the number of questions you write for each of these 12 categories to improve the validity of your test. Let's first focus on writing the stem of multiple choice questions. In this example, note that the stem focuses on just one principle regarding the relationship of the moon to the tides. In this example, the stem poses one problem. If instead the stem asked the purpose of the prefix, root, and suffix of a word, it would fail the greatness test. Note in this example a graphic is included. That's fine, as long as after reading the stem and viewing any visual, the student with content mastery will know the correct answer. The stem passes the greatness test. If this stem began with, "What would not happen if?" it would fail the greatness test. That's because the stem would not only be assessing the content, but the student's ability to work through the negatives to determine the correct answer. Avoid attempting to stump students with trick questions, as they do not accurately assess content mastery. Let's look at some examples of stems. Is this a great stem? Yes, this stem is narrowly focused, poses one problem, stands on its own, is written as a positive, and is not a trick question. How about this one? This stem fails the greatness test on 2 points. First, you cannot know the answer from just reading the stem. You would need to view the options first. Second, it's written as a negative. How about this one? No, this stem poses 2 problems instead of just one. Because soil has different advantages over sand than it does over clay, it would require 2 different answers. While you may feel that asking a student the capital of a nation is a low-level and somewhat meaningless question, the fact is, it is a fine stem. This stem passes the test as well. It's good to include visuals and is often necessary when assessing at the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, now that you know the key to writing great stems, let's think about designing the options. I've included the photosynthesis item here as a reference. 4 seems to be the most effective number of options. In this case, photosynthesis is the only best answer. Using all of the above and none of the above are tempting, but they reduce the accuracy of the test in assessing the content. Absolutes can throw off the students, having them think there must be one exception. This too reduces the accuracy of the test in assessing content. In this case, all of the options are one word. If option B was the process of photosynthesis, it would attract attention as the possible correct answer. Likewise, using the word Process relates to the word process in the stem, which can alert the student to the correct answer. So you wouldn't want to have option B say, the process of photosynthesis. Note that all of the words are written to be believable as a process, even though chlorophyllism is not actually a word. As an example here, if the stem calls for processes, each option would have to include more than one term. Each of these distractors relates to content covered in the study of photosynthesis. If you included driving or fishing, these options would not seem to be plausible answers. Items 10 and 11 have more to do with assessing a test of multiple questions. You don't want the answer pattern to end up, for example, A, B, D, C, A, B, D, C. It is also most tempting to place the correct answer in the C slot, so you want to keep that in mind as you assemble questions into a test. Moving on to writing distractors, we'll use the photosynthesis example again. All of the distractors here are believable. Respiration is the other major process of plant metabolism. Chlorophyll is used in the process of photosynthesis, and green plants are autotrophs because they produce their own food. Each of the distractors is written as one word, like the keyed response. These are all terms related to photosynthesis. A student who lacks content mastery could easily select any of the other choices. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. Does this item include a great set of options? No, this is not a great set of distractors for two reasons. The distractors are nouns, while the keyed response is a sentence. Also, option D, pumpkin, clearly has nothing to do with the stem. Yes, this is a great set of distractors. Note that while the musical notes are reduced in time from whole to half to quarter to eighth notes, the options are not written in any order of time, so as not to give students a hint. No, this is not a great set of distractors. While the keyed response is root, the options stem and leaf relate to a different use of the word root. This could be confusing to students, causing them to select the only option that stands out as being different. Alternatively, a savvy student will realize stem and leaf are not word parts and eliminate them from the evaluation process. You now have a foundational knowledge for writing great multiple choice questions.